welcome to Awaken Voices Reading Night. This is the second reading night for Issue 10, Intention for Change. We are excited to celebrate the writers in the special section of Issue 10, Embodying Justice, and share their work with you tonight. Thank you all for joining us. We are so glad you are with us. My name is Jerry. I'm the creative director here at Awakenings, and I oversee the editing team, and it was my absolute pleasure to get to know the writers and their writing. Before we dive in tonight, there are just a few house rules. First, we are recording this event. Attendees' audio and video will not be recorded, but Awakening staff and our writers' video and audio will be recorded. Everyone's chat messages will be recorded. Second, technology is hard. If you experience problems and need to sign back in, the personalized sign-on link you received from Zoom will still work for you to rejoin us. And we are using a service called Otter to provide closed captioning for tonight's event. Unfortunately, the captions will not appear directly on your Zoom screen. However, if you would like to follow along with live transcription captions tonight, we are sending an outside link in the chat now. And we hope that you are able to have this link and Zoom both open on your screen or devices in order to see the captioning. This transcription is happening automatically through Otter, and we apologize if it is not 100% accurate. We do hope to have closed captioning available on the recording of this event on our YouTube channel, which we'll post in the near future. For tonight, we have the chat function turned on. You can open the chat by clicking chat on the bottom of your screen. We'd love for you to respond with any words of encouragement or congratulations in the chat box. You can select if your message will be visible by all attendees and writers or only by the writers and Awakening staff. If any writer or any of us hosting has a technical issue, and we have all probably been in a Zoom room or another space at this point when that has happened, please just bear with us. All right, if we were in the gallery tonight, right now, I would be pointing out the direction of our breathe room in case anyone wanted a place to decompress alone or to sit with an advocate. For tonight, we have a phone number you can call to reach out, and tonight's advocate for English speakers is McKenna. We will place the number to reach McKenna in the chat now. This is a Google Voice number. You are welcome to call McKenna at any point during tonight's event. And if it makes you more comfortable, you can block your phone number before dialing by pressing *67 before you dial, and you do not have to give your real name. If you want to call McKenna and she is already speaking to someone else, please wait a few minutes and call back. We are also putting CanWin's 24-hour hotline phone number in the chat now. This hotline includes language options for English, Korean, and Chinese. This is another resource for support tonight if you need it. We are also putting an additional list of virtual resources in the chat now. Finally, on the house rules front, this reading night is very special in a lot of ways. We do want to acknowledge that we'll be talking about sexual violence, and that includes different ways people define this term and different views on how to be an ally, an advocate, a survivor, and other identifying terms. The ways in which people choose to identify might not quite fit the way that you choose to identify tonight. We all participate in making a brave space of listening, of speaking, and we certainly hope of celebrating being together across distances tonight. Whew, with all the house rules set, let's dive into the actual program. Tonight, we will hear from writers who are published in the section of Issue 10 called Embodying Justice. We have been so honored that Liz Sun is our guest editor for this section. Liz curated this section and invited these writers to participate. She has also been a big part of the ongoing partnership for the exhibit entitled Embodying Justice, which we have moved from this summer to next summer 2021. In late 2019 and early 2020, Awakening's vision was that this section of the magazine would continue the theme of intention for change and bring us into a space of looking outward to the larger community, both locally and globally, while also looking at a historical context of survivorship and allyship through the artwork of some survivors who were euphemistically called comfort women. While we move this exhibit to next year, I am so glad that we get to share with you part of this programming tonight. At Awakenings, we talk about survivorship and allyship looking different for different people, just as healing or even art can look different for everyone. And yet, calls for change to any person or system seem to take time. Needing to delay the exhibit has not lessened the reality for survivors, for allies, or for the need for continued calls for change and for truth to be spoken and listened to. With that in mind, I am very glad that we are gathered here tonight, whether this is your first time engaging with writing and art that talks about sexual violence and specifically about the survivors who are called comfort women, or if you have been an ally or a survivor for a long time. Now, to start the readings tonight, please help me welcome our guest editor, Liz Sun. Liz Sun is an associate professor in the Department of Theater at Northwestern University. Her research focuses on the interplay between histories of gender-based violence and transnational Asian American performance-based art and activism. She is the author of the award-winning Embodied Reckonings, Comfort Women, Performance, and Trans-Pacific Redress, and is a scholar in residence at CanWin. In issue 10 of Awakened Voices, she was interviewed about her book, which I encourage all of you to read, and then read her book, which you can purchase online. Please add some lovely reactions in the chat, and please help me welcome Liz Sun.
Thank you, Jerry. Good evening, everyone. Facing the vast blue ocean, the girls line up on the bow of a large ship. They are wearing hanboks, traditional Korean dresses in the chromatic style of what schoolgirls commonly wore in the 1940s, a white blouse with a flowing black skirt. A towering figure that resembles a soldier stands guard behind them on the ship, adorned with a Japanese flag. There are 3 girls in this picture, recounts survivor Lee Yong-ya. One is me, and the other 2 are my friends from my hometown. In this painting, titled Joseon Maiden Stolen Away, Lee depicts her memory of being taken away at age 15 with 2 of her friends as sex slaves for the Japanese military in 1941. In the years leading up to and during World War II, an estimated 200,000 girls and young women, euphemistically called comfort women, were coerced into sexually serving Japanese troops across the growing Japanese empire. When describing this painting, Lee recounted that she did not know what happened to one of the girls and expressed her desire for accountability for what she, her friends, and countless other women endured. Art therapy classes, which started in 1992, taught by Lee Kyung-shin at the House of Sharing in South Korea, have offered survivors like Lee opportunities to give visual expression to difficult memories of wartime violence and to their hope for reclamation. Survivors of Japanese military sexual slavery have testified not only through their artwork, but also through their public activism. They have traveled the world to speak out against their perpetrators and participated in the Wednesday demonstrations, weekly protests held across from the Japanese embassy in Seoul, South Korea. Their paintings have been displayed on banners at the Wednesday demonstrations and in posters at solidarity protests organized globally. On the 1000th Wednesday demonstration, a life-size bronze statue of an adolescent girl, officially known as the Peace Monument, or Pyeonghabi in Korean, but colloquially called the Girl Statue, or Sonyeosang in Korean, was revealed. The statue sits next to an empty chair that evokes those who passed away. In explaining the choice of a hanbok, the traditional Korean dress for the statue, the creators, Kim Seok-young and Kim Eun-sung, recall seeing images of girls wearing black and white hanboks in the paintings of Kang Deok-kyung, another survivor who took art therapy classes at the House of Sharing. The bronze statue can now be found across the world. Countless communities have installed this memorial in parks and plazas to honor the survivors and to claim space for their history. Synthetic resin versions of the statue in color have also appeared in museum exhibits, on buses as public art, and at protest. Supporters have chosen to sit next to the statue in an act of solidarity. In this special section, local Chicagoland artists and advocates discuss the impact of survivors' histories on their own artistic practice and advocacy. Visual artist Rose Camastro-Pritchett, CanWin Executive Director Chie Kim, youth advocate Isabella Cho, and poet Emily Jungmin Yoon show us how the bravery of comfort women survivors travels across oceans and generations. Their testimony and activism remind us of the power of the individual who speaks out and the collective that gathers around them in solidarity. These 4 contributors heard the voices of survivors and took up the call to engage and witness. In the Comfort Women Project, Camastro Pritchard sewed maps of comfort stations, which were essentially rape camps, and testimonial accounts onto quilt patches made out of handmade paper, which grew into community installations, sewing circles, and panel discussions. In her essay, she recounts how working on this project made her, quote, keenly aware of similarities between statements made by the Comfort Women survivors and present survivors of sexual violence, close quote. In Come Sit with Sonia, Kim articulates how the Comfort Women survivors have inspired survivors of domestic abuse and sexual assault with their courageous example of survivor leadership. Her essay illuminates the importance of a local domestic violence and sexual assault services agency like CanWin in joining the Comfort Women survivors' global quest for justice. Quote, when we lift up their rights, we ultimately lift up the rights of all survivors, close quote, reminds Kim. A member of Elevate, the youth leadership group of CanWin, Cho shares her journey of learning about the Comfort Women history and its impact on her life. Quote, when I engage in creative writing, the issue of the Comfort Women often occupies my thoughts, writes Cho. It serves as a testament to how meaningful that moment in history is to me, to my sense of self, as well as my ethnic and cultural inheritance, close quote. Lastly, in her poetry, Yoon returns to the testimony of 4 survivors and opens up space for their voices to echo even louder. She explains, quote, I like my poetry to remind readers that even if a part of history may not seem to be relevant to their lives, it is their reality too, close quote. Inspired by the power of survivors' storytelling and the interconnectedness between art and justice, Awakenings and CanWin will partner next summer to showcase select artwork by survivors and the statue in the exhibit Embodying Justice from June 2021 to August 2021. The acrylic paintings and colored pencil drawings of survivors Kang Deok-kyung, Kim Bok-dong, Kim Sun-duk, and Lee Yong-young are a powerful testimony to their resilience and their ongoing fight for official redress. This art not only gives material form to survivors' desires for justice, but the very act of creating and interacting with the art becomes another form of justice. The exhibit seeks to celebrate the bravery of these women in speaking out and promote awareness of the ongoing activism of the women and their supporters, and to make connections to contemporary sexual violence in relation to state violence. Awakenings and CanWin join the contributors in this section in envisioning a local movement of artists and activists in Chicagoland in solidarity with survivors' ongoing quest for justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Everyone, please join me in clapping by adding some comments in the chat. Thank you, Liz, for reading and sharing your beautiful words with us, for bringing in the writers in this section, and for being a truly wonderful guest editor. I hope everyone reads Liz's editorial and the interview she did with us in issue 10, and then reads her book. Our next reader is Isabella Izzy Cho. Isabella Izzy Cho is a recent graduate of North Shore Country Day School in Winnetka. She served as a youth peer advocate leader, or YPAL, intern at CanWin this past summer, and continues to remain a part of the CanWin community through her involvement with its youth leadership group, Elevate. She will be reading Exploring the Self and the Nation through the Comfort Women issue, which was published in issue 10. Please help me welcome Isabella Izzy Cho.
Hi everyone, as Jerry mentioned, I'm Izzy and I'll be reading from my essay. Whenever I confront a challenging period in my life, my mother always says, remember that this moment, the now, is just a single star in the constellation that is your life. Though her words are meant to serve as solace during times of personal difficulty, I can't help but apply her axiom to the way in which I perceive and position myself, a single individual, in the sweeping course of history at large. As I grew older, absorbing more information about my identity and heritage as a young Korean American woman, I could not help but identify underlying resonance with the star constellation analogy. I, a single individual, did not act or exist independently. Rather, I was one of many stars, stars that coalesced to form constellations of broader, sweeping transnational legacies. In recent years, partially thanks to my perception of my singular identity as a product of multiple intersecting traditions, I grew deeply curious about the people and place that I descended from. Though I was vaguely aware of the violent, politically complex, and war-torn story of Korea, I yearned to attain a more dimensional, informed perspective of my ancestral homeland. Enter Can Win's 29th Benefit Gala. Occurring over the span of a few hours, the event enabled Can Win to raise money that went toward furthering critical services for Asian American Pacific Islander immigrant survivors of sexual violence. During the gala, through a multitude of speakers, I learned more about comfort women, a euphemism for young girls and women who were coerced or tricked into sexual slavery by the Japanese Imperial Army during World War II. As I sat in my seat, enraptured by the insistent gravity of speakers' messages, I couldn't help but think again of my mother's words. Gender-based violence in today's world did not emerge from nothing. Rather, it grew as a pernicious and iterative extension of previous wounds, crimes, and traumas, ones grounded in patriarchy, militarism, misogyny, sexism, and cultural myopia. The comfort women issue was not merely a vestige of a concluded past. The cultural and psychological ramifications of those periods of deep hurt and violence rippled into the present, heavily shaping perceptions of selfhood and nationhood. The comfort women issue was my issue, a grave story that I inherited by virtue of who I was and the people from whom I descended. I felt a deep-seated urgency, a conviction to learn more about the history and narratives of this violence. A few months following the benefit gala, I became a Youth Peer Advocate Leadership or YPAL intern at Can Win. Through the few weeks that I immersed myself in the Can Win community, I was able to learn more about sexual violence, particularly about additional cultural, linguistic, and legal difficulties that immigrant survivors face in the United States. The more knowledge I equipped myself with, the more passionate I became about attaining a deeper understanding of the subtleties, underlying forces, and human impacts of sexual violence. I saw my experience as a YPAL intern not as an end in itself, but rather as a pathway to a sustained commitment to resisting domestic and sexual violence in my community and the American landscape at large. I returned to my passion about the comfort women issue, ultimately choosing to pursue a semester-long independent study in Korean history for my senior year of high school. Throughout the course of the semester, I studied oral testimonies, academic journal articles, books, and even a short film to ground myself in an involved and extensive understanding of the era. After the completion of the semester, one thing is clear: I still have so much to learn. That, I believe, remains the beauty and burden of committing oneself to a cause. The more that is done, the more that needs to be done. It seems paradoxical, but upon further reflection, it makes sense that sustainable, systemic change is iterative. As someone who loves creative writing, I often observe motifs of political partition and historical trauma emerge in my own poems, essays, and fiction. After my independent study, an analytical and academic endeavor, I found myself gravitating toward creative expression as a means of reconciling the brutal history of comfort women in Korea. Deeply personal, creative writing has the potential to elucidate emotional vulnerability as a means of introspection and redemption, a way of emphasizing shared humanity in a way that academic writing cannot. When I engage in creative writing, the issue of the comfort women often occupies my thoughts. It serves as a testament to how meaningful that moment in history is to me, to my sense of self, as well as my ethnic and cultural inheritance. Whenever I ruminate on the comfort women issue, more specifically the practice of using the written word to examine and make sense of the brutality that the era engendered, I think back to some thoughts that Vietnamese American writer Ocean Vuong shared in an interview with Tricycle, a Buddhist journal. When prompted to reflect on his creative process, Vuong speaks to the dichotomy between fear and compassion. These dual forces, he contends, each provide a reservoir of energy that creators, thinkers, and activists alike may draw from to fuel their practice. He says, "We see bombs being dropped. We see bullets put into bodies, all from fear. It is a powerful energy. But compassion is an energy too. Every day when we wake up, we have a choice. Will we choose fear or will we choose compassion and love?" End quote. Much has been done in the name of comfort women in my local community and the global community at large. Much still needs to be done. The largest gift of being part of the movement of individuals who resist the systemic erasure of this historical trauma has undoubtedly been learning from and being inspired by fellow fighters. There are a multitude of stories and values that mobilize these individuals. Rage and frustration at government inaction, at the dismissal of these wronged bodies and lives, pervade dialogue surrounding the era. However, underlying all these efforts is compassion, that core emotive impetus that Vuong and so many others place such unwavering trust in. I stand in solidarity with comfort women and will continue fighting, knowing that our work is never done, knowing that this story must persist. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Izzy. Everyone, please add your comments in the chat. Thank you, Izzy, for sharing your words with us. Our next reader is Emily Jungmin Yoon. Emily is the author of Cruelty to Our Species and a PhD candidate in Korean literature at the University of Chicago. Emily is actually not able to be with us here tonight, but she has sent a pre-recorded video of her reading an excerpt of the poem series we reprinted in issue 10, and she has also included a new poem. Hopefully playing this video will go smoothly, and if there's any delay or lag, don't worry, we will be posting this video on our YouTube channel after tonight. While Emily cannot be here tonight, if you would like to share any reactions or love in the chat, Awakenings will be able to share that with her later. So please do feel free to post in the chat about her work. And now, hopefully, with the help of one of our amazing programming interns, Rue, and our amazing program assistant, Abby, we will share this video by Emily.
Hi, everyone. I'm Emily Jungmin Yoon. I'm the author of A Cruelty Special to Our Species, and I'll be reading 5 poems for you today, 4 from the book and 1 that's been written more recently. So I'm going to read with sections from this poem sequence called Testimonies. And each section is named after a former comfort woman, which is a euphemistic term for the sex slaves of the Japanese Empire. Kang Dok-kyung. My school teacher asked me if I wanted to go to Japan, do something good for the emperor. We were led to a harbor, a cargo ship, a train, to a factory in Doyamaki, where Food was so scarce. We pulled grass, roots, anything we could eat. Girls died of hunger. Some went crazy. I ran away, was found by a Japanese soldier. Kobayashi took me to a hut every evening. Soldiers, countless soldiers. On the wild mountainside, Kobayashi. An unusually quiet day. I found Japan had lost the war. I sailed to Korea, jumped from the crates, hit my stomach with fists. I failed. I named him Youngju. Left him at an orphanage. Met him every Sunday. One Sunday, I saw another boy in his clothes. Youngju had died of pneumonia, already buried. I thought of Kobayashi bringing me rice in his drunken stupor. I thought of the piece of steel I took at the factory. I found some of the steel so attractive. I still believe he is alive, somewhere. I want to believe that all was just a terrible fate. But then, Kim. I was 14 years old. It was around November 26th. It snowed, I remember. I was on my way home from the photo studio with my portrait when a man in olive-drab clothing grabbed me by the collar, cursed in Japanese. Was he Japanese or Korean? I could not tell. I was thrown onto a truck of mournful sounds of weeping. These girls and I crossed the border into China. There was no poison, no ropes. In Sugo, I was number 4. I was Takeda Sanai. The first night an officer grabbed me, I drank disinfectant, but I didn't die. In Nanjing, I had malaria, appendicitis, hemorrhage in my vagina, but I didn't die. In Singapore, I saw dark-skinned men digging ditches. They looked at us as if they would burst into tears. In Singapore, the war ended. We boiled leaves from trees and wild greens. We ate this to survive. When I made it back to Busan Harbor, I went to my brother's house in Daegu. In his dream, I had shaved my head, was drowning in the ocean, but I didn't die. My name is Kim Chang-hee. I was born on December 20th, 1920. I was born into a good family. I am a Catholic. I should forget and forgive, but I cannot. When my head turns toward Japan, I curse her. I want to find solace, but I cannot. When I wake up every morning, I cannot. Kim Yoon-kim. An automobile drove up the road, something I had never seen before. The driver let me climb up, and the truck rolled on, then kept on going and going, and I begged them to take me back, but I was thrown into a cargo train, a cargo ship, Paladin, a comfort station where 3 truckloads of soldiers arrived. One by one they raped all night long with filthy, wordless bodies. My child's body. They impregnated girls and still forced sex. When a child was born, a blue uniformed woman put the body in a sack and carried it away. Soldiers used the sack, saku, reused condoms. Girls got sick. When a girl got too sick, a guard wrapped her body in a blanket and carried her away. Such was our life. Look at my fingers. When I ran away, the police smashed my hands, leaving a stiff pen between my fingers, like this. Another year passed like this. In June 1945, when the camp seemed deserted, I escaped and ran all night. In a month, I reached Korean shores. In Harbin, I saw at a stream a hand of a sick girl who had been buried alive. In my dreams, she is still reaching toward wider waters. My hands, with their crooked fingers, cannot help her. Next, I'm going to read a poem called Say Grace. Say grace. In my country, our shamans were women, and our gods multiple until white people brought an ecstasy of rosaries, and our cities today glow with crosses at graveyards. As a child in Sunday school, I was told I'd go to hell if I didn't believe in God. Our teacher was a woman whose daughters wanted to be nuns, and I asked, "What about babies? And what about Buddha?" And she said, "They're in hell too." And so I memorized prayers and recited them in front of women I did not believe in. Deliver us from evil. O sweet Virgin Mary, amen. O sweet, O sweet. In this country, which calls itself Christian, what is sweeter than hearing, "Have mercy on us from those who serve different gods"? O clement, O loving, O God, amidst ruins, amidst waters, fleeing, fleeing. Deliver us from evil, O sweet, O sweet. In this country, point at the moon, at the stars, point at the way the lake lies, with a handful of feathers, and they will look at the feathers and kill you for it. If a word for religion they don't believe in is magic, so be it. Let us have magic. Let us have our own mothers and stars, our spirits, our shamans, and our sacred books. Let us keep our stars to ourselves, and we shall pray to no one. Let us eat what makes us holy. Thank you. For my last and fifth poem, I'm going to read the poem called Body of. Body of. My mother teaching me how to protect my body. When a man touches you here, yell, "I am a body that will bear a child." How was I, a child, to understand that as the sanctity of my body? How was I to know to say, the body without that potential is also whole and holy? A man who touches a child does not care whether she will one day be fertile. A dear friend, on making the body useful, encourages me to have babies. What does it mean to say, I have my body? I have a brain, I have a life, a heart, I've said before, but I meant only mine, without knowing there were outlines of other bodies fleshing in my center, being the body of woman, for whom body means collective, as it is for the body of evidence, of knowledge. Here I present my body of work, my body of water. Here my body. But are we of our bodies, we of this nation, this body of land? Bodies are thrown across oceans, across lands. Bodies lie bleeding through the evidence of bullets. Honest bodies bleeding honestly. In order to continue living, we try to leave evidence of our lives. We accumulate bodies in whatever way we can. Men leave themselves in women's bodies. Friends, I am just now ready to love my own. I love my father's eyebrows on my face, and I love my mother's calves on my legs, and I love the parts of my body that I do not name. Let that be enough. The future of this land is uncertain, and how high the flames, the waters will be. This land in which I give up something every day. This land in which I still believe and wait. Thank you.
A big thank you to Emily for finding a way to be with us tonight through this video. Thank you again, Abby and Rue, for making this happen smoothly. And Abby will be putting a link to the YouTube video of this reading by Emily as well that you can access. All right, our next reader is also an artist and has artwork reproductions published in Awakened Voices issue 10. Rose Camastro-Pritchett has had her own art school, exhibited internationally, received grants, awards, and residencies for her work, run community art projects, and taught in schools and colleges in the US, Saudi Arabia, and China. She holds an MS.Ed in counselor education and an MFA in interdisciplinary book and paper arts. And I'm very excited that we will be able to both hear an excerpt from her piece and see some of the artwork. Please join me in welcoming Rose Camastro-Pritchett.
Hello. Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to be here and to share my work with you. I'm going to read first part of my essay, and as I do so, I will show you some of the artwork that I did that goes along with it. Making art about horrific subjects requires distance. Being too literal would repel viewers rather than engage them. I approach the artwork conceptually, looking at all of the elements. The euphemistic comfort to describe the women and the comfort that is provided by a quilt. Hand sewing and embroidery as women's work. The robes that the women wore when they were raped, a garment covering a whore. Handmade paper, a craft that goes back to the Han Dynasty, 100 BC. The result was a 20-inch by 18-inch quilt on handmade paper with hand stitching and pulp painting. My intent was to present the women with dignity and strength as survivors of sexual violence. To achieve this, I placed the robes in a position of power, straight on to the viewer, with a red French knot for the bleeding heart. Around the outer edge, I repeatedly stitched 200,000, the number of women used during the war. The research on the comfort women expanded. How were the women taken? What went on in the comfort stations? How long were the women there? How were they treated? What happened to them after they returned home? I read more books, saw documentaries, read newspaper accounts. Shumei Wu, PhD professor of history at Shung University Economics and Law at Wuhan, Hubei, China, a friend of mine, was particularly helpful in discussing conditions and culture of the Chinese during the war. Her grandparents lived in the mountain hills above Wuhan at that time. I was particularly interested in the negative attitude of the Chinese local governments and citizens towards the comfort women once they were released. Commonly, they were ostracized and in some cases sent to labor camps as punishment for what the government considered to be consorting with the enemy. As I was invited to participate in other exhibitions, the HMF Studios England and Art on Armitage Chicago for their exhibitions in Athens, Greece, Prairie State College in Chicago, Reflex Space in Glendale, California, I made work that addressed the trail of the comfort stations in China. The comfort women's abduction, coercion, rape, and their lives once they returned home. The medium remained the same: handmade paper, pulp painting, hand sewing, and embroidery. Okay. Now, okay, Abby, is this all right?
Yes, that looks great. We can see it.
Okay, all right. This piece is about the comfort stations on all of the military bases. Each base had a station, the place where the women were used for sex, where they were raped. The stations were purpose-built or set up in vacant buildings, also including temples. The red dots are on the locations of the military bases. I photocopied an original map of China onto the handmade paper so that the placement of the bases, the red dots, would be accurate. In all of this series, I used the robe image for the women. Oh, I just noticed I forgot something. Up on top, I hand sewed 200,000 4 times because that was the number of women that were taken during the war. Okay. This is an ongoing project. I started with one piece and then it grew over the years. I read interviews with the comfort women, and I used their direct quote for the work. It's really important for me that the artwork that I do is based on truth, and that required from me a lot of research. Okay. Okay, we're going to do this one. All right. This is from an original quote from WWII, a survivor, a Chinese survivor from Kongang village in Yu County. I used, again, the map of China as a base and the robe image for the women. I presented the Japanese military men as birds with caps. I copied the military caps that the Chinese wore. And on the bottom is the quote, "We were raped, we were beaten and raped." Okay. While I was doing this work, I became aware of similarities between statements made by comfort women survivors and present survivors of sexual violence. The quotes on this girl, and it's all hand-stitched, the quotes were from interviews with comfort women survivors. I wake up with nightmares. Why us? My heart aches with shame, but it was not my fault. I am so embarrassed talking about these things, and I still have these scars. This work is larger than the others. It's 16 inches by 45 inches, hand-stitched on handmade paper. And those little dots that you see in there, they're from embedded beads indicating scars. It was hard to escape the common thread of shame and silence about sexual abuse. Whether it is as highly organized and brutal as in the case of the comfort women in China, perpetrated by men of power in Hollywood, the American news media, and the White House, or secretly done by a father to his daughter in Evanston, Illinois. It needed to be talked about, exposed, and not forgotten. And talk we did. I returned to Menlo College for an artist residency in the fall of 2018. To accompany my Comfort Women Project exhibition at the college, a group of students and I created an interactive installation for the student body, faculty, and staff to participate in at the library. This is called the message board. It held comments about feelings concerning sexual violence. This might be about themselves. My heart aches with shame. It set up a system to keep myself from seeing the truth. I don't want anyone to know. I wake up with nightmares. It might have been about others. This just didn't happen to her. It killed my father. I want to hurt whoever did this to him. My husband blames me. The notes were folded and thumbtacked inside so they could be opened to be read. This large bulletin board had accompanying boards where students posted newspaper and magazine articles about rape, sexual violence towards men and women, as well as the Me Too movement. The librarians filled a large table with books about sexual abuse and violence. Students organized an evening of conversation for the college and community. They had experts talk about the history of the comfort women and the trauma resulting from sexual violence. A student spoke about the Me Too movement. A Menlo professor read her poetry. A student presented a spoken word piece. Before we started, a sound piece by students reading comments from the installation was played. We ended with an open discussion. I returned home. I returned home to complete the artwork that I started during the residency. It focused on statements made by individual comfort women and has been added to the body of work. The Comfort Women Project has moved on to other venues, more art making, more discussions. And yes, there is the common thread of shame and silence about sexual abuse. Scars remain, but healing is possible. Thank you. Thank you for letting me share this work with you. If you want to find out more about it or see more of the artwork or ask me any questions, please go to my website, www.rosecamastropritchett.com, and I will be happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose, for sharing your writing and your artwork with all of us, and for sharing how these projects came to be. Everyone, please join me again in the chat in this virtual way of adding your applause. And our final reader for this evening is Ji-Hae Kim. Ji-Hae Kim is a 1.5 generation Korean immigrant who has spent the past 10 years advocating for survivors of gender-based violence via her work at CanWin. She currently serves as the executive director at CanWin. I would like to add that Ji-Hae Kim has been incredibly wonderful to partner with over the past many months and planning for the Embodying Justice exhibit programming. She will be reading from her piece in issue 10 entitled Come Sit with the Sunya. This piece is especially timely as the Global Day of Action is August 5th, and there is a way for all of us to participate in solidarity with the survivors, even in the midst of a global pandemic. CanWin will be hosting an event on August 5th, and I think Ji-Hae's piece, Come Sit with the Sunya, paints a beautiful picture of how this day of action has looked in Chicago in the past, and hopefully this will encourage you to join her and the rest of CanWin virtually this year in the Global Day of Action. Now, please add some lovely reactions in the chat and help me welcome Ji-Hae Kim.
Hi, thank you so much for having me today. Every year on the first Wednesday of August, CanWin joins survivors and advocates around the world for the Global Action Day for Comfort Women to demand justice long overdue. Comfort women is a euphemism for women and girls forced into being sex slaves by the Imperial Japanese military in occupied territories before and during World War II. For this day, we engage in a performance entitled Come Sit With Her that features a replica of the Sonyeosang, girl statue, aka the Peace Monument, and invites Chicagoans to learn about who she is and who she represents. Some may wonder why CanWin, a domestic violence and sexual assault victim service provider in the Chicagoland area, engages in the work of advocating on behalf of comfort women survivors. After all, we are located in the United States, a place that did not directly experience the atrocities of World War II. Some may wonder why CanWin is getting involved in international politics, as the discussion of the comfort women issue is often tied to the push and pull relationship between the Korean and Japanese governments. How is this related to Canwan's day-to-day work of supporting survivors of gender-based violence? To these questions, I would like to point to our mission, which is to eradicate gender-based violence, including domestic violence and sexual assault, especially for women and children across Asian American communities and beyond, through culturally competent services, community engagement, and advocacy. I believe that participating in the quest for justice on behalf of Comfort Women survivors, Canwan is helping to achieve its mission in several ways. First, Comfort Women survivor activism has inspired advocates around the world, including those at Canwan, to demand justice and raise awareness about sexual violence, especially in conflict zones. Before there ever was a Me Too movement, survivor Kim Hak-sun spoke out in 1991 to share her experience of military rape and torture, and to demand an apology from the Japanese government. Since then, she and others have led a truly survivor-centered anti-violence mobilization on an unprecedented scale. Survivor leadership is imperative in cultivating a meaningful movement to eradicate gender-based violence. These activists have demonstrated the transformative power of survivor leadership as they have taken a multifaceted approach to address their experience of trauma on political, legal, social, cultural, artistic, and psychological levels. It is an honor for me as an advocate to join and learn from them and to replicate their efforts to break the cycle of violence that to this day affects people across the globe at interpersonal, political, and cultural levels. Eradicating gender-based violence also requires grappling with the patriarchal past that bred and continues to breed gender oppression, be it carried out by individuals or by institutional forces. Systemized gender oppression brings about violence against women and children. The injuries sustained by the victim are thus intimately personal yet universal at the same time. These shared experiences of oppression generate solidarity among survivors, advocates, and allies, including Canwan, to remember the history of gender-based violence and keep on breaking the silence and taboo that surround it. So on a hot day each year, hot summer day each year, Canwan advocates, allies, friends, and families come out to downtown Chicago to put on the Come Sit With Her performance. In the beginning, we performed it with a human replica of the Sonyeosang, an actual woman dressed in white and black hanbok, barefoot, sitting next to an empty chair. In 2019, the Korean Council for Justice and Remembrance of the issue of military sexual slavery by Japan gave us a resin replica of the bronze statue, which we used for that year's performance. During Come Sit With Her, we simply tell the story of victims and survivors and invite people to come, listen, and ultimately show support and solidarity by sitting next to the Sonya. For me personally, the Come Sit With Her performance brought about new experiences every year. When I observed it for the very first time, the Sonya triggered for me an uncontrollable sobbing. As an advocate for survivors, I often had to contain my emotions to help facilitate survivors' action plans for safety and stability. As soon as the performance began, however, all those guards came tumbling down. I felt as if the Sonya was beckoning me to just be still with her and her story for that moment. I did not dare go near her that day and sit next to her. I was afraid of breaking down completely. The year after, I was 4 months pregnant with my second child when I stood in a semicircle surrounding the Sonya. The blistering sun was making me dizzy, and I had to step aside to a shaded area to catch my breath. At that moment, I couldn't help but think of the pregnant woman who appears in a rare photo of Comfort Women survivors, in which she is seen barefoot, holding her swollen belly, barely able to stand up straight. Remembering her, I felt stricken with a mix of guilt, grief, and anger. And last year, seeing the Sonya reminded me of Kim Bok-dong Halmoni, a peer survivor leader in the Comfort Women movement, and an advocate for others who had experienced sexual violence. She had passed away at the end of 2018 at the age 93. While the Sonia statue look of a young girl represents the victims at the time when the violence occurred, the actual survivor had lived on, created their own lives, which were marked by trauma, but were not defined by it. The Sonia reminded me of their strengths and resilience, as well as their continuing quest for resolution, justice, accountability, and apology from the harmed doer. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you join us for our August 5th virtual Global Action Day, and more information will be provided to you in this flyer and in the chat box. I think you'll see a link to a RSVP site. So if you could go in there and register, we'll see you then. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jihye, for sharing your words with us and reading that beautiful piece. Thank you for talking to us about the Global Day of Action, and I hope everyone will find out more about CanWIN's event on August 5th through the information we've just dropped in the chat or by going to their website or social media. I'm looking forward to attending myself and standing in support of the survivors there. Now, if we were all in the same space, we would have all the writers come forward for a final thank you tonight. So tonight, we are going to have all of the writers' videos come forward. And writers, if you would take a virtual bow or wave to all of our guests, please join me in thanking and celebrating all of our writers for the Embodying Justice section of issue 10. And an especially huge thank you to Liz Sun. Thank you to our advocate tonight, McKenna Rogan, to CanWIN's hotline team. A special thank you to Abby Morose, who is the technology genius behind the scenes tonight, to Jimin Kim, who designed the layout of the magazine, to Rue and Flora and Sal, our amazing programming interns, and thanks to all of our friends at CanWIN, and thanks to all of the writers in all of issue 10. Thank you to all of you audience members for joining us tonight. A quick final few words. You will receive an automated follow-up email tomorrow that includes a link to give your feedback if you would like. We'd love to hear from you. We are also placing a direct link to the whole magazine in the chat. And while the magazine is absolutely free to read and download, if you would like to support Awakenings, please consider making a donation on our website. Finally, a plug for our first ever virtual exhibit, Legacy, which released last week on our website, and we'll be adding new pieces from our permanent collection every Friday over the summer. All right, that's all, friends. Thanks again for being with us tonight, and we wish you all a good and well evening. Hope to see you on August 5th. Thank you.